And Imam, he would often highlight the preamble of the declaration, where it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident," so forth and so on. And he was able to connect it with the values of the religion, not just the religion, but the scripture itself.
Greetings. Welcome to another Profound Conversations. This episode, we're going to talk about the American experiment, knowledge, mercy, and the ongoing test of democracy. These two married duo are now really etching the landscape for the 50th year anniversary in concert with other team members around the country to highlight the 50th year, and are leaders in what is called the 50th anniversary of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Imam Muhammad, he, at the height of his following, had 2.3 million followers in the United States, and is the son of Elijah Muhammad, who is known to influence everything that we are Black and proud of in America. And I got a chance to catch up with them in Philadelphia, where they did a Power Packed event that was full of workshops and people I hadn't seen in 30 years came out for this event, probably 50 for some. And they led an event that was both futuristic and reflective of the morsels of history. Welcome to the studio, Marsha Nevins Muhammad and Mujahideen Muhammad Imam. We wanted to get to the heart of something that could be a connection to what's happening right now in democracy in America. And the Imam, of course, was someone who spoke a lot about the African American experience in particular and its role for leadership around the world. So I want to start off with both of you kind of giving us a glimpse of what your initial thoughts are of how the Imam connected with the American experiment.
Thank you for having us. We're appreciative to be here on Profound Conversations. When I think of Imam W.D. Muhammad and the year that we are in now, 50 years since his coming into a leadership of inheriting the Lost Foundation of Islam in the wilderness of North America, that was the full name, and him transitioning to the World Community of Al Islam in the West, one of his signature lectures, inaugural lectures to the public, was actually in March or April, I believe. It might have been April, 1975, in Philadelphia, and it was titled "Remake the World." And he was sharing how the profound audacity, so to speak, for people who was, coming up from slavery, coming through Jim Crow, coming through all these forms of oppression, to then now come into Al Islam and say we're going to remake the world, right? And so what that does in my mind, as I reflect back and I listen to it pretty often, it just shows that the presence of God, the guidance of God, is always in the servants of God. And so when I think of his leadership, that's what I think of: service to God, the guidance of God, and the ability to use our intelligence and our courage to change the environment, no matter what environment or what time we're in.
My experiences with faith in the early years of my life was in the Baptist church, but as an adult, I became a Muslim, and I just happened to stumble upon this particular community. And of the things that I've learned about Imam Muhammad over the years, the thing that stands out to me in connection to American democracy and just this American story is that Imam Muhammad wasn't afraid to connect faith and like democracy and nationalism and things like that. And that's not something that you often find in in faith communities, right? It's either we're all, whatever our faith is, and the other things are sort of to the left or to the right, whichever way you want to put them. And he was very bold about wanting to marry and engage those things and have us to see that our experience in life is one. It's not this duality.
And you can see this this oneness in the flag that is flown with the American Muslim mission initially, I think it was called when that was developed, and how it's integrated with the American flag. And in fact, he got a lot of flack within the Muslim community, especially the African American Muslim community, because oftentimes we weren't seen as the fabric of America. We still were getting some of that three-fifths of person in many of the laws and the way things were enacted around us. So he held this flag up boldly, reclaiming it, almost like someone on the moon with a flag saying, "This is ours." Um, and not everyone received it.
For some people, you would say rightfully so, right? If your story is connected to something horrific that you see when you see this flag, then of course your mind goes there, right? How are we tying ourselves to this dream that often didn't consider us and the vision of it, right? And so people, had their experience, and not we can't necessarily judge it to say you should feel that way, or no, you shouldn't feel that way. But I think the thing that is unique to people of faith is that you have to always look for the what was it intended to be. There are things that perhaps don't go the way that they're supposed to go, quote unquote, right? Or they don't seem the way that they should be. But we're always working toward the ideal, right? And I think that's the thing that allowed so many people to get comfortable with Imam Muhammad picking up that flag and saying, "Hey, I know that our story getting here was rough, and we have many ancestors who, had stories and experiences to tell that weren't pleasant, but the work, the commitment, the building of the place that we are now in, we deserve to have a part of that." And I think that that's the thing that allowed so many people to go forward with the picking up of that flag, and really being and really sort of interweaving themselves into the American flag fabric.
Yeah, I like what you just said in regards to the intention. And what brings to my mind is, and as you mentioned, Imam Muhammad, that makes the connection between faith, or the principles of our faith, and the fabric of this civic experiment, as was expressed. And he goes to what we all know as some of the founding documents. These founding documents I think I took a course somewhere along my journey where they identify about 50 documents that connect to the foundation of the vision, or the insights, or the intention, as was expressed, of this American experiment, right? And one among those is the Declaration of Independence. And Imam, he would often highlight the preamble of the Declaration, where it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident," so forth and so on. And he was able to connect it with the values of the religion, not just the religion, but the scripture itself. And that was very, as was mentioned, very unique, but also dynamic in the sense that it actually shows that historically the founding framers, or the founding fathers, they also were engaging the scriptural text. They even had the Quran. We know of Thomas Jefferson, his Quran, and Adams had
Mhm.
theirs, and they had it as really, they said, in the law section of their libraries. And so,
Mhm.
if we put all these things together with insight and vision, we definitely get to see that, as was stated, we can continue to look at the flag as a emblem, or as we said, even in the Nation of Islam, of even of the cross, all these things that have been in our collective psyche as emblems of shame and death. But then there's also the higher meaning, the higher understanding.
Absolutely. And if you look at the history of this country and its foundation, even as they talk about Christopher Columbus, there was Moors guiding that ship, who had already been here before, right? And then the first country to acknowledge the United States as a sovereign nation was Morocco, right? So Islam has kind of been in the infrastructure of this country behind the scenes for some time. In fact, even the name America is Amir embedded in it, which is leader in Arabic. So there's so much. California is the Khalifa, right? All of it. If you look around, you will see evidence of the Islamic heritage as part of the American experience or experiment. Having said that, the ideals of the American experiment were radical when they were presented, and they hinge upon we are all created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. Those rights right now seem to be more infringed on universally than ever before. So, what role in this 50th year anniversary as a celebration are you also in reflective state or strategic state for what you are actually dealing with in the right now times?
Yeah, so I think it's so around centered around the 50th anniversary, right? I think that this time that we're in is this recentering, is a moment of recentering, right? What is the mission, right? And so a lot of people, they are, they're just Muslim, right? And for whatever whatever that means to whoever says it, right? But um, I think that the 50th year is a time of recentering and really defining what is the mission and what is the work, and are you willing to pick it up and do it and be impactful in your personal life, in your family life, and your community life in this country, right? Because, as you said, there are so many rights and liberties that are being infringed upon. And when you were talking about Islam sort of being interwoven into the American fabric, you didn't use those words, but I was just thinking, people are sometimes off put by the fact that we are using we're saying Islam, right? Because that may not be the framework for which you live your life. But when you think about the fundamentals of Islam, they're basic principles about honoring and valuing human life. And it really boils down to those things. And so it's in this 50th anniversary year, let's look back and see what was done and how it compares to where we are now, and what work are you willing to pick up with this charge that you have, with this faith tradition that you've accepted for your life, and how are you going to allow that to be big and be bold and be impactful for not just yourself but others.
I know I made a self declaration. I said, for everything negative I see in social media, I'm going to do 10 things to offset that. Kind of like a carbon footprint offsite, right? It's like, okay, maybe those direct things that you're witnessing, you can't press a button and get the kind of results that you ultimately would want at that moment. It's all on God's time. But you can take action in many different ways to create a more just environment and to offset some of the inequities that you're witnessing
Right.
all around you.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just thinking, I'm looking at myself on the screen, right? And like, so I'm wearing this scarf, right? And whether I'm wearing this or not, right? It's still right that when, I walk down the street and somebody is in need of something that I have, that I give if I can give. Or if I see someone hurt and I'm able to help, I can help. And it doesn't necessarily matter that I have this on to do it or not, right? It's a responsibility of all of us as human beings. And so I think that's the other piece about uh, sort of this work that I talked about, is that um, it's it's for us to, yes, be out front as a Muslim, because that's what we've chosen for the framework for our life, but also just to share with people just how basic and simple and humane the principles are. And that's not for me to encourage you to also be a Muslim, right? Because so many people are so afraid of that type of thing, right? It's not that. It's, this is for benefit of all. So even if you never chose to, take Shahada and become a Muslim, um, what is it that you have in your humanity that allows you to spread that to others and for us to see each other as coming from this one source, however much we know about it or don't know about it.
I want to ask Mujahideen, ma'am, there are about four pillars that I think within the followers of Imam W. Muhammad we use as kind of foundational, and that is this idea of the four birds, right? Can you explain the idea of the four birds and how it fits in with this democratic perspective?
So these principles go back, of course, to Revelation, the guidance of God, the Quran, and it gives us a narration of Abraham, Ibrahim, peace be upon him, um, seeking guidance um, for life renewed, seeking how to renew life when destruction or death is around, having faith in God, that God is always in control, always aware. The question he asked was, how will the dead rise, or how will things be restored to their excellence? We can say, right? And from that inquiry, there are instructions that were given. There's plenty ways to interpret it, but among those ways is that there are portions of the birds that to put them on each mountain, representing establishment. And Imam Muhammad, he connected that these principles of community life are preserved through institution building. Among these four, primarily, education is our top priority, um, business or economics, culture, and governance. Right, and so by having institutional or organizational, foundational life in among a people, you can preserve the productivity of that society. And so when we look at any of our communities, whether urban, whether suburban, or wherever we are in the country, if you check those four institutions or areas of interest, the you can determine the vitality of that community for the most part. We see in our urban communities, we're always talking about funding, economic development, education, disparities, and you see as a reflection of that, not having those things established for the benefit of all, we see that crime, we see all these other influences that have influenced the people. And so our uh, call or continuous mission is to continue to wherever we are. Allah has allowed some of us to leave our urban communities, maybe, but wherever we are, we should be contributing factors in those areas of society.
And so this quest of believers to be involved in these this resurrection, so to speak, of these four birds being called back, um, with the understanding that the current landscape is so tumultuous with governance being reorganized altogether. Everything we thought we knew about the Constitution is being challenged at this stage in development. With this new landscape of tests, how do you think, what do you think are the tools that the Imam's leadership has left for us to kind of soar, strive, survive, whatever you want to call it in this time?
You have to make, as was stated earlier, you also have to declare your intentions, and you have to accept the responsibility, right? So, for example, it's kind of hard to get the benefit of something if you're rejecting that thing, right? So, if we're in this nation, it's kind of hard to get the benefit, the best in this nation, if we're rejecting the nation itself. So, first, we have to claim this is our nation, this is our environment, this is our home. From there, you use the tools, as Marsha inshallah will talk about. It will give you be on a stronger foundation than someone who's trying to utilize these strategies to beat or compete, and you're not even focused on accepting that Allah put you here. No matter how you got here, you're here.
And I'll just add to that that I think the biggest tool that Imam Muhammad used was himself, the model in himself. You know, we saw him do things. We saw him be among leaders. We saw him be in spaces that we wouldn't dare go in, or we didn't even think that we could survive in. And he did it with grace, and he did it with I was going to say pride, and then I've kind of pulled back from saying it, but he did it boldly, and he did it humbly. If you can do those two things at the same time. And I think seeing him do that gave us the freedom and the liberty and the confidence to also do it in our respective capacities. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would say he gave us in that regard.
We are going to come back and we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we will go in more depth as to what the 50th year unfolds for the future.
Thank you for joining our profound conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to our podcast and then gift this information to a friend or family member using the share button.